Well, hello everyone, and back. We're so grateful that you have been patient with us in the last few moments. I have some exciting news to tell you. In a fast forward first, there was an attempted hacking by Russians. That's how much they wanted to see this content and be a part of the community. So for the 555 people still tuning in, you are looking at some really good stuff because people in other places want to get at it. So thank you so much for being patient with our technical difficulties. We're going to go a little bit later than anticipated because we have some amazing speakers coming up, and we want to make sure they get the time they deserve, including this next panel. One of the things we wanted to do with Accelerate Good Global this year is feature some of the best in class content from the Accelerator program. And this session, Alex Bernadotte and Evan Marwell have generously come to teach our tech nonprofits about fundraising for the last few years. And it is one of the most beloved sessions we do throughout the program. So we're so honored that they would come here and do this for us in a virtual environment. And they're not only great fundraisers, they're amazing human beings. So join me in welcoming Alex and Evan. Why don't you both just tell me a little bit about your background briefly and what organization you're primarily associated with? Do you want to start, Alex?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Wow, I'm still trying to take stock of the moment in which we find ourselves here. So you'll forgive me if I'm a little bit disoriented, but I'm going to try to move to business as usual. So I am the founder and CEO of Beyond 12. We are a high-tech, high-touch nonprofit. We are a coaching platform that works with college students, particularly students who are first in their families to go to college. We work with students to help them graduate from college, and we do that through a virtual coaching model, a campus customized mobile app called My Coach, and then a back-end predictive analytics engine that allows us to predict which students need our help and when, and then prescribe the right type of support. In terms of my background, I do this work because I am a first-generation college goer. I was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, grew up in inner city Boston, was the first in my family to go to college. And when I went, we all assumed that the most difficult part of the journey was behind us until I actually got to campus and discovered that the most difficult part was still ahead. So I come by this work because of the personal experience that I have with this issue, and then the professional experience and the professional background that I've had by combining technology and social services to be able to impact our most seemingly intractable social challenges.
Yeah. And Evan, how did you come to this work?
Well, I came to this work a little bit by accident. For those of you who don't know me, Evan Marwell, I'm the founder and CEO of EducationSuperHighway. For the last 8 years, we've been putting high-speed broadband in every public school classroom in America, and we announced in October that we have actually completed our mission and that 99% of the students in America now have access to high-speed broadband in their classrooms. It's a particularly poignant moment for us with the work that we've been doing, as literally 30 states have closed all of their schools and the rest of the states have closed at least some of their schools. And there is this sort of mad scramble going on right now for how do we make sure that we don't quarantine the minds of kids while we quarantine all of us here in San Francisco and beyond. And the thing that I'm really excited to say is, while there's still a problem, there's probably 10 million kids across America that don't actually have internet access at their homes. Where we are today in terms of having a solution to this problem, if this had happened 6 or 7 years ago, schools would just be closed. There would be no opportunity at all to actually keep educating kids. And so we're really proud of how the ecosystem has developed, how students and teachers have taken advantage of the bandwidth in their classrooms to learn how to use these kinds of tools, and how they're starting to put them to work today to deal with the pandemic. I came to this work because I'm the son of two educators, and after a 25-year career in business, I decided it was time to go make a difference in the world, and stumbled upon this problem. And the rest has been history.
We love it. Now, in addition to being wonderful humans, you both are powerhouse fundraisers. So, and you didn't start out a career in fundraising. So I'm interested, maybe we'll start with you, Evan. What do you wish you knew about fundraising early on?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing that I wish I knew early on about fundraising was the importance of finding a fit with your fundraiser. With your funder. Funders have things that they're interested in, issue areas, they have strategies they believe in and that they don't believe in. And, we spent a lot of time knocking on doors and making pitches to people who later on we learned, well, actually they weren't really interested in the problem that we were trying to solve. But funders like to spend time with people to learn about what's going on. And I wish I'd understood that one of the most important things you can do as a fundraiser is do your homework up front about which funders are likely to be good fits for your mission and the work that you're trying to do.
I think that's such an important point. And it can take a while before you figure out what type of funder fits your type of model.
Is
that what you found, Alex?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Right. To everything that Evan just said. I think the other part of this for me, one of the things that I wish that somebody had said to me before I started fundraising, that it is actually more art than science, because we're such data-driven people and I run such a data-driven organization. I approached it from that perspective, right? So here are the prospects, here are the number of folks who are giving to our issue. Let's create the spreadsheet. Let's build the model that allows us to estimate and predict, right? Like what percentage of this capital can we get? And so we took a very methodical and data-driven approach. And at the end of the day, for me, the realization was this is really just all about relationships. And I can build the most beautiful model and I can, create my targets and I can have my spreadsheets and all of those things. But relationships really trump everything. And it really is about not just finding the right fit, but also trying to figure out what are the assets, right, that you can bring into a fundraising relationship and your fundraising strategy, because it looks different for so many different people.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, though, that I would say is 100% it's all about relationship. But it's also a numbers game. It's like sales, right? And you got to knock on enough doors because you don't know which door is going to actually open. So yeah, agree that to actually get the money, it's about building the relationship. But you gotta knock on a lot of doors if you're going to find those relationships that will connect with you.
I think you're right, and that's doubly challenging, Evan, if you are a founder of color, right? If you don't have access to those doors, or those doors are purposefully slammed in your face, it can be tricky. Alex, how do you think about navigating fundraising as a founder of color?
Yeah, thanks for bringing us to that point, Shannon, because that's the point that I like to make whenever I'm having these conversations off the bat, right? That there are certainly lots of lessons that I have learned, but none of those lessons actually fix the systemic and fundamental challenges, right? That we're facing as fundraisers of color. And I think just to put a finer point on the statistic, right, that organizations led by founders of color receive an estimated 4%, right, of the funding that is available philanthropically. And a lot of that money is really just sort of small, one-time restricted dollars, right, that don't actually allow founders to be able to sort of dream the big dreams and actually fix some of the challenges that we're facing. And so that lens colors everything. It colors the numbers, it colors the access, it colors the ROI, it colors the calculations. I mean, just everything about the fundraising process. So definitely agree with Evan that it's about knocking on doors and it's about numbers, but also it's about trying to go around these systemic challenges, right? That we're facing as founders of color, that you can't necessarily create a strategy, around in a lot of cases.
I think that's fair. And particularly when funders put restrictions and maybe even more restrictions on founders of color, both of you have navigated restricted funding, right? Like that is the thorn in the side of all fundraisers. How have you dealt with that problem?
Well, we've been really fortunate that we were able to convince most of our funders to make our funding unrestricted. And you're right, it's like being given the freedom to do what's right as opposed to like what you thought was going to be right. And I can't tell you how many times we've started down a programmatic track and realized it was the wrong thing. And if the money had been tied to that specific program, we wouldn't have been able to adjust and move forward the way we have. We have had some funders, though, that have made the funding restricted. And I think that the best thing to do there is really are two things. Number one, try to broaden the definition of what the funding is supposed to be used for as much as you possibly can. So instead of saying, we're going to build a website that creates price transparency information for schools about K-12 broadband, say something like, we're going to use data to help lower the cost of internet access for schools. And that gives you a lot more choices in how you're actually using the money. The other thing, though, that I think when you have restricted funding is to also talk up front with the funder and say, look, this is our plan, but neither of us really wants us to spend money against this plan if the plan's not working. So can we agree that we're going to learn as we go through this process during our grant, and that you'll be open to us modifying how we use the money as long as we can show you that what we originally intended to do is not as good as what our new plan is.
And that's where the relationship building piece becomes so critical.
For sure.
Yeah. Alex, do you have strategies? This is a question that's come up a lot in the accelerator. Do you have strategies for re-engaging with a funder once they've ghosted you?
The famous ghosting, yes. A couple of different strategies. One is just keeping them updated on news, for the organization. So using every opportunity to communicate, whether big or small. So being able to say, here's an announcement about something that's happening with our team, with our organization, even in the sector that they may be interested in. So really sort of positioning yourself as the expert and as the individual that has some of the domain expertise, so that when you're sharing information with them, it doesn't just seem like it's self-serving, but you're actually, filling a need, which is, here's what's going on in our sector, and let me tell you about it. In addition to, here's what's happening with our organization. I'm also a big proponent of just face-to-face, right? And running into people at events. And so AGG and some of the other events that are happening. So knowing who's going to be there and being as organic as possible, obviously, right, in terms of running into people. But I think it's a lot easier to say or to have a conversation or an interaction face-to-face and to show your presence face-to-face, right? So that it's not easy to ignore you. When you are on a panel or you're having a conversation or you're, sort of running into somebody, it's very easy. It's easier to ghost virtually. And I recognize the impact of that statement as we're moving to a more virtual world. But I try to increase the number of in-person touch points as possible as a strategy for re-engagement. I think that makes sense.
One of my favorite strategies, sort of building on the in-person thing, and this is for funders, but for any kind of stakeholder that you're trying to convince to do something, is the old, I'm going to be in your city. Why don't we work together? And like, whether you're planning to be in their city or not already, but just like, I can't tell you how many times I've used that strategy, and they're like, oh, you're going to be here? Okay, let's meet. And then you can move things forward.
I want to retweet that one as well. It's one of my favorites. And sometimes it's a little tricky because I'm like, I was going to be in Austin next week, and they call your bluff. So you're scrambling to buy a plane ticket to get there. But I just want to retweet that. Like, that is absolutely a strategy that's worked for me as well.
Absolutely. And we're going to open it up to questions. So if you have any questions for Alex and Evan, please put them in the chat. Both of you have been doing this for a while, and I'm interested in what you wished you'd known when you started fundraising, or what you would impart to newer fundraisers who might be on listening into this chat?
I'll start with one of the things for me is we all have very complicated relationships with money. And so I'm going to say I had a very complex relationship with money, came from a very strong family that does not believe in charity, right? And that believes that no matter what, you just have to sort of show up. And so as a new fundraiser, I carry that complexity into the relationships, into the funding relationships and partnerships. And one realization for me later on was, and I sort of try to go by this, right? It's like, how do I approach funding relationships standing and not kneeling? How do I approach those relationships from a position of power, right? Like, I'm not asking you to give me money. It's not going into my pocket, right? It's not anything that I'm asking for you to do for me or my family. It is really helping our world solve a challenge. And quite frankly, I think it would be an honor to partner with us, right, and our team on this journey. So switching that mindset for me was very, very important and very crucial. And then I think the other strategy that I came about very later on is, how do you fundraise to towards your vision rather than your budget, right? Like, I started sort of having conversations that were very myopic about specific budget items or specific pieces of the work that we did, but shifting that and saying, okay, here's this big vision that we're trying to achieve. This is what the world will look like if we're able to achieve our wildest dreams. And so would you fund that, right? Is that something that you're interested in? Mm-hmm. And it moved the conversation away from, okay, well, your budget is 1.7 million and then blah, blah, blah. So then this is the percentage of what, of what my giving will represent for your budget. And we really started talking about, okay, here's the big numbers. And I say this all the time, systems change does not cost $50,000, right? And so when we're talking about systems change and we start talking about dollars, right, that moves. It allows you to have a different kind of conversation with funders and stakeholders.
I'm going to go to a question from the chat. And this is a question I'm really excited about because we talk about it all the time in the accelerator. Maria Tamalini asked, have you ever gotten a no from a funder that you converted to a yes? Like, one of the things we say in the accelerator is, if you're not getting no's every day, you're probably not doing your job. Right? Like, you have to get out there and ask, and sometimes no's become maybes and then become yeses. So can each of you tell me a story about what time you got from a no to a yes? Maybe Evan? I'm sure you have.
Well, I've certainly gotten plenty of no's. I'm trying to think about one that I was able to convert to a yes. So we were fortunate enough that we were able to ultimately convince Salesforce.org to be one of our supporters in our work. But originally, we went to them with our bold vision of, bringing broadband to every school nationally. And their response was, well, that's really exciting. We know it's really important, but we're just focused. We only want to do work in the communities that we're in. San Francisco, Indianapolis, all over the place, but not nationally. And so for us, the thing that we were able to do to convince them to actually go from a no to a yes was when they started doing work in schools with technology in San Francisco, they started realizing that internet was a problem. And they actually called us up and said, can you help us with this? And we were like, of course we can help you. And more importantly, we can help San Francisco Unified. And after that experience, I then went back to them and said, now, don't you want to make this possible for kids across the country? And they're like, yes, we do. So it was, you have to be opportunistic. You have to find a way to match what you can deliver to what their need is. And then I think, it creates that relationship that then allows you to make a bigger ask.
I think that's super helpful. We have another question from Adam Rosenweg. When should a founder, ED, CEO start thinking about hiring a full-time fundraiser to help? Maybe Alex, you've done this a bit.
Hi, Adam. How are you? Adam and I know each other well. Quite frankly, I don't know if I know the answer to this question, right? Like, I think we've gone all over the place with it. And Certainly, I think there are two kinds of when I think about fundraising hires, there are two types of hires, right? Like the first kind is really the kind who are going to help you with just your operations, right? So being able to do things like grant writing, grant reporting, build your systems and your tools internally, to be able to effectively deploy you as a fundraiser, right? And so that's one category. And I think that that's a hire you make early on, right? To help you sort of translate the work that you're doing externally into the systems and tools, right? That are going to have an impact and helps you just get the ROI, right? Of your investment. So that feels like it's a pretty early on process, right? To be able to set up the infrastructure before you start really sort of increasing the number of relationships that you have to manage, right? And the number of relationships that you have to be able to report on. The second level, though, is somebody who is a senior fundraiser who's going to be able to help you close, the deal. And I think there's a tricky place in that, right? So that for us, it felt like we were ready for that. And then what we were hearing from the philanthropic community is that they still wanted to meet with me. Like they still wanted me to be at the table. So it felt like we weren't really leveraging, right? Like the power of a senior fundraiser. So I would even say that we don't feel like we've gotten to that point yet, because fundamentally it feels like the philanthropic, or at least the stakeholders, are still trying to meet with me as the founder and as the CEO. So I would say, when to make that transition when it feels like, right, like your external stakeholders are willing to have those conversations with individuals who are not you, the founder and the CEO.
So we have to leave, tragically, but you have one piece of parting advice or wisdom that you want to share with all the new fundraisers on the chat?
Be bold.
Nice.
My experience is everybody asks for too little money. So when you make an ask, be bold. The worst thing that can happen is they can tell you they'll give you a lesser amount. So, don't undersell yourself.
That's excellent.
I mean, that's the exact same thing that I would say, right? Like ask, again, I keep saying this, systems change does not cost $50,000. So if you're really going out there and talking about changing systems, ask for the amount that, as Evan said, is bold, right? And put it out there. And people can say no, but you may be surprised somebody might say yes. And then to my new fundraisers, say it unapologetically. Because, I would say the amount and I would sort of cringe a little bit and I would laugh and I would be like, 17 million. If the amount is 17 million, be unapologetic about it and be able to sort of track what that means in terms of how different the world will be if you are able to get the financial resources to achieve your wildest dream.
Well, I am feeling bold and incredibly grateful to the two of you for joining us and sharing all that you know. You're going to make the tech nonprofits tuning in much stronger, and hopefully the funders tuning in far more empathetic to what it means to be a fundraiser in this world. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Great to be here.
Thank you, Shannon.